Hey there, fellow citizens of the internet. Welcome to the Moses Kabandana podcast. Today, I have a special guest with me, Mr. Reinhart. Welcome to the Moses Kabandana podcast.
Well, thank you, Moses. And thank you for inviting me to be on this good podcast. How are you doing?
Doing all right. And we're going to be trying to talk about cross-cultural experiences and adaptability. So before we dive deep into it, could you give us a quick synopsis of who you are, your background, and what do you hope to get out of this podcast?
Who am I?
Mm-hmm.
Really, let me start with a story. It was one of my favorite stories my mom used to tell me about when I was a little kid. When I was just a really small little kid. I mean, real small. Back in the days when kids could be feral. She would talk about me just getting up and just going out the backyard and being gone for hours. And I'd just be on these little adventures as this little kid walking through the weeds and, exploring off on trails in the hills all by myself. And I'm sure there was some kind of music playing in my mind too as I was in that adventure. But yeah, I'd be gone for hours and I'd come back with some little treasure, some old hat or something that I found. And, I've just been doing that for my whole life. Just going out, traveling as much as I can, meeting different people. And, now I'm an adventure photographer and have my own podcast. I just enjoy the process of traveling and meeting new people and cultures. And it seems that I've acquired a knack of connecting with people. I've got a lot of other faults, but apparently that's one that I've been able to acquire.
What was the first place that you would you consider that you traveled to? It doesn't necessarily have to be abroad, but just the first place that you traveled to.
Oh, the first crazy thing is something that was incredibly dangerous and stupid. I drove from Los Angeles through Texas, down through Mexico, down into the Yucatan Peninsula in a car with a couple of buddies. And we went diving down there and wanted to see the Mayan ruins.
Wow.
It was a heck of an adventure. It was really dumb to do because we were driving through some pretty sketchy areas in Mexico. But that's probably the first real adventure abroad. There was but it has one of my favorite stories. When we were driving down, we didn't really have a lot of money, and we were driving almost 24/7, and I was doing most of the driving. And to keep awake, I was drinking the Mexican Coca-Cola, and it's made with real sugar, and I was buzzing. It was like 2:00 in the morning, and I'm driving through the jungle areas down off the coast of Mexico, and I just couldn't take it anymore. I just had to pull over to the side. We're on a 2-lane road in the middle of the jungle. You shouldn't have pulled over because you never know what's going to happen, but I couldn't drive anymore. So I'm sitting there in the car, driver's seat, windows down. My head's kind of leaning on the door. I'm trying to relax, get a little bit of sleep. And I'm listening to the jungle. And if you've ever been in the jungle is noisy. Yeah, it is really noisy. And there's all kinds of life making noises, and you hear things that are eating other things and things that are being eaten. And all of a sudden, as I was sitting there, it got perfectly quiet, which is okay. Something's going on. So I kind of perk up and I look down the road, and this black Jaguar jumped from the jungle onto the road, not 20 yards from me. And I'm going, whoa. One, to see one is amazing. And to be this close was just incredible. He just jumped out onto the road, kind of looked up and down, sauntered across the road, back down into the jungle. And then a few minutes later, you could just hear the jungle noise rise up. It's safe. The Jaguar has moved on.
Yeah.
So that's probably the first real official start.
Did you have any Spanish under your belt?
Not a bit, which was made it real real interesting.
Hmm.
It was one of those
Yeah.
things where it was poorly planned and but well executed, and we made it back alive. And
That's what counts.
oh yeah, going through some parts where you knew there were some illegal activities going, and making it through some federality checkpoints. You
Mm.
learned how to talk, be be nice, and work your way through the systems.
Yep. Yeah. And wait, so have you picked up Spanish since then?
No, I haven't, but it
Okay.
like I say, it was poorly planned. But
Mm-hmm.
you make a good point. Is ever since wherever I travel, I make it a point to learn some of the language. For instance, I just got back from Cambodia, and
Mm-hmm.
before I went there, I spent uh, quite a bit of time and effort learning the Khmer language, so that when I arrived there, I could speak with the local Cambodians. Um,
Wow.
when I was doing the work in Kenya, I was learning Kiswahili to be
Mm,
able to
mm.
communicate. So it's
Okay.
from your travels too, and your language expert too, speak many languages. Even if you just have a little bit of an ability to communicate, it makes a world of difference in how the local people treat you. And
Oh
so,
yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Even if you don't speak the language, if you show that there is some sort of effort on your behalf to try even to pronounce, the local dialect or the language, it goes a long, long ways. So wait, so then how many languages do you speak?
well, I don't, English is the only one I'm fluent in. I speak a
Yeah.
smattering of Kiswahili, um,
Mm-hmm.
Khmer, and I'm just starting to learn uh, basic Arabic because I have a trip planned to Morocco.
Wow.
So,
Okay. Well,
and
and when is that?
that's going to be in October. Oh, and I
Okay.
know some street German. So when I was
Okay.
in
Okay.
Austria,
Huh. Yeah, you're gonna like Morocco. It was what part of Morocco?
that's in the works. I think what I want to do is
Okay.
spend time in the western deserts area and in the
Hmm.
Atlas Mountains. Probably start in
Please go
Marrakesh
to the.
and go west, and
Yep.
then swing through and see if I can do some time in the Atlas Mountains.
Okay. Yeah, the Atlas, if you can get to the high Atlas Mountains, definitely highly recommended. Highly recommended. Uh, yeah, I think we spent maybe 2 3 days through the Atlas Mountains, and then we continued on to a small town in the Sahara. I think it's called Mirzuga. Um, but yeah, the entire 2.5 months in Morocco was
Are
was
you there for
amazing.
2.5 months?
Uh, yeah, yep, 2.5 months.
Outstanding.
Yep. Yeah, we have well, putting it for sale, but we had an RV, and so we left Portugal through Spain, got a ferry into Morocco, and then 2.5 months in Morocco, and so that was that was good, some good stuff. That was some good stuff. So you've obviously had many cross culture experiences, right? Could you share like, well, culture shock, right? If we're gonna talk about culture shock, what was one of your biggest culture shocks that you have had?
I would say probably in Guatemala. There was a number of years that I was
Hmm.
working down there as a volunteer, and we were setting up field medical clinics and doing some school improvement work. And it's the local Mayans. It was in the Alta Verapaz region of Guatemala. And so the population
Okay.
there are ethnic Mayans. Uh, and they speak Quiche. So the their culture is going through a lot of changes because the Spanish and
Hmm.
the main Guatemalans have always been trying to quash the Mayan culture, get rid of it, have it absorbed into the more general Guatemalan culture. And there's been
Mm,
bloody civil wars there. And, they've been trying, the Spanish and their descendants have been trying to do that for centuries. So
mm,
their culture is always in flux, and they're kind of trying to hang on to it. And then you have, somebody who's 6 foot, Caucasian coming into their village, and I'm literally twice as tall as most of them. So you talk
mm,
about
mm.
being conspicuous. There's no way you're going to
Right.
blend in.
No.
And their culture is still deeply rooted in a lot of Mayan traditions.
Mm,
The the way they live, the way they still farm. There are a lot of ceremonies that they still do that date back to the original, what we think of the Mayan culture. And so it was fascinating. And it took some years to learn. When I first came there,
okay.
we were viewed with suspicion. Uh, However, over the years, um, we became very close. I learned some of the Kichwa language. Uh, I'm sure I butchered it terribly badly, but it's by just, I guess, being nice, understanding. You're
Mm,
not gonna fit in immediately, but you can still be respectful, and so long as they understand, people understand that, and that you're not there to exploit them. You're not there as just a tourist
mm,
to take some selfies and move on. That you're actually there to help and understand them. It made a huge difference. But the
mm,
cultural experience is very different because they really have one foot in modern times, but really the other foot back in ancient times. And they're trying to figure out how to work that. And then if you go into that mix, and when I went there the first time, it was only like 10 years after the Civil War. And it was a brutal, brutal Civil War. I mean, the atrocities
mm.
on both sides. Um, so when you're walking into that mix, that's pretty challenging. But
Mm, mm,
but you never know what's going to happen. There's when I went there on the first time, uh, there were 2 other volunteers that were already there, and they wanted to see this waterfall out in the rainforest. So they asked me if I'd go with them, and so we hiked out. We found the this beautiful waterfall. But on the way back, we were met by this person whose name was Antonio. He's a local Mayan, and actually
mm.
turned out to be a local historian and folklorist. But we had never seen each
Okay.
other before. And he had walked out to meet us. We came back about halfway, and he walked up, he introduced himself, and he asked me my name, and then he said, "Well, we're going to call you Mech." I guess that's
Mm,
my Mayan name there. But
okay.
he said, the reason why I came out is he said his spirit and my spirit connected. And so he needed to come out and meet
Mm,
me.
okay.
Now that's a puzzler. You're
Mm,
kind of going, this is somebody I've never
yeah.
known. And, you know,
Mm, mm,
you're out in the middle of the,
mm.
so when you talk about, cultural things, you got to kind of roll with it and see, hey, there's stuff out there you don't know. And we turned out
Yeah.
to be, over the years, became good friends. He was shared a lot of
Mm.
stories about his culture there, and
Wow. Wow.
eventually, and here's one of the benefits of making the effort is we had built a clean water system at a school,
Mm,
and the elders uh, were going to do a ceremony, and it turns out that in the Mayan culture, everything has spirits, and they wanted to make sure
okay.
that this structure that we bought, or excuse me, this structure that we built for them, didn't have any evil spirits. And so I was
Okay.
invited to this very special Mayan ritual called the Watasink, which dates back
Mm,
to forever. And it was fascinating because they, at the four corners, they dug a pit and they put in a sacrifice of different things like tobacco and other things. And
mm,
they sacrificed a chicken and
okay.
put it in the corners. And then they were splashing something that looks like blood on the corners,
Mm,
and then lit a light, candlelight, and were doing their prayers at each corner. And then
mm,
in front, there's a resin called copal, which is from a tree, which is very aromatic, and they use it for a lot of their ceremonies. And then they had this big copal fire, and all the elders are sitting around uh, praying. And then
mm,
And then the last thing that happened is they sent one of the elders inside, and they put a copal candle down there. They put uh, salt all around, and then they took the copal and all the corners of the structure was in this copal incense, all to bless it and to get rid of all of the evil spirits. And this
mm,
ceremony goes back to the original Mayan civilization. So it was, you can imagine me. I'm surrounded by the Mayan elders there, and the 6 foot, gringo from America gets to participate, or at least
mm,
watch.
mm.
It was fascinating to
Yeah.
see. So that's sort of when you make the effort, you gain their
Mm,
trust, and you
mm.
get to see things like that.
Yeah, no, that's thank well, one, thank you for sharing that. That's really great because it's like um you're simply there observing, right? You're taking it in. You're not judging whether this is good, whether this is bad. It just is, and you're simply there to take it in. Huh. One of my culture shocks, I suppose, it's not definitely not as deep as that. It's not even a culture shock per se, but when I first came to the States, I remember um, maybe I shared this already in a different episode, but it was like we were driving downtown and I saw a homeless white person for the first time, right? And in my mind, given that I was born in Rwanda, for those that are just listening in right now, I was born in Rwanda. I grew up in Mozambique, and then I came to the States when I was about 15 or 16. But in my infancy and up to 15 16, just the idea that there is such thing as poverty connected to being white is just that was incomprehensible in my mind because every single white person that I've ever seen was coming to give me aid, right? So in my mind it was just incomprehensible that you can have a homeless white person. So I remember driving downtown and I saw a homeless white man on the street, and that just shattered my mind. I was like, what is going on? Where am I? What is this? So it's not. I don't know if that classifies as a culture shock, but it's certainly an experience that it stayed in my mind. And I learned a lot from just that little thing. That it's like, well, okay, there is a lot more to life than I thought. So, huh?
But
And
that's the
so
beauty. That's the
mm,
beauty of travel, and the beauty of
yeah,
travel off the tourist paths is that
right.
you get to experience and you get to see things. And a lot of times, those things that you see uh, challenge your notions of what reality is and what you think and what your assumptions are. So that's
Right.
we all grow through travel if you're open to it. Now, if you're sitting on a
Mm,
beach
mm,
somewhere in a hotel that looks like every other 5-star hotel, and sipping cocktails by the poolside, I mean that's
right.
fine.
Right.
That's okay for what it is, but you're not going to learn much from the culture.
Well, like, okay, staying on this traveling topic here. What would you say are some of the biggest misconceptions that Americans have when it comes to traveling abroad or to just like less developed nations?
Preconceptions. That they think things run like they do back home. The
Mm,
people have different timetables. Everything's not
okay,
running,
yeah,
right on the clock as we see them. And time is a different concept for a lot of different people. So I think that is one of the biggest shocks for people coming from like the United States to if you travel through Africa or wherever. Things happen when things
mm,
happen.
mm.
And it's not
Right,
necessarily
right.
bad on the other side. It's just the way they do it. And there's a reason why they do it that way. Um, Transportation is
Mm.
not as reliable. So, when things happen, it's just acknowledgement that, well, this is what we can do when it happens. And don't get upset when the bus is 3 hours late because it happens all the time. Just roll with it.
Right, right. There's this book that I was reading. It's a memoir of this couple, and they were missionaries in Nigeria, and they were expressing how he was going to officiate a wedding, and so he received the time that the wedding was going to be, and so they planned everything accordingly, and so he would get there, and an hour would go by, 2 hours, sometimes 3 hours, 4 hours would go by, and then the the wedding couple and the people would show up, and so okay, that doesn't make any sense. So they would try to readjust. Okay, so we're going to the next wedding that he's going to officiate. They're gonna get there 2 hours late. Well, they get there 2 hours late. People came and they left already. So it's just trying to figure out like how does time work in this culture was just one of the biggest hurdles that they had to get over it. Yeah, so just yeah, that little thing there, time, just it's perceived differently, it's treated differently in other cultures. So yeah. Anyways, so okay, uh, have you had a chance to go to the Asian continents?
I was in, well, yes. Many,
Okay,
many years ago, I used to do what's called adventure racing, and I got to do the Eco
mm,
Challenge race in Borneo. So that
okay,
was really it was very, very difficult, but it put us back in the jungles where we got to see some pretty incredible things. And lately, I just returned back from Cambodia and Vietnam. So those are my excursions into the Far East, and
okay.
in the Near East, trip to Turkey, which was uh,
Mm,
very, very culturally interesting. Highly recommend Turkey.
Turkey. Okay, okay. I just noticed that I said the Asian continents as though there's a few. Uh, Well, so at the beginning of this podcast, I said that we're going to try to address adaptability, right? So let's touch on that a little bit, and it doesn't have to be necessarily directly to do with cross cultural experiences, but as as you've traversed different cultures, different borders, and you've seen how life is done in other corners of the world. Um, how like well one do you adapt from culture to culture, like did you try to assimilate to the local culture, um and so yeah, how do you deal with adaptability when you're crossing different cultures?
Well, you start out with the mindset that you're living in the world of the unpredictable. So you have to
Okay.
anticipate that there's going to be problems. There's going to be
Mm,
issues. A bus is not going to show up. A train's not going to be on time. Things are going to happen. So you just go in with that understanding that uh, it's not a rigorous program that you're going to be going through. So you're going in already with an adaptable mind. Things are going to happen, and once you accept that things are going to happen, when it does, you go, yeah, okay, this is why we're here. In fact, that's the cool part about adventures at other places is that it is unpredictable. If it wasn't, then it'd be boring. So you go in with that idea
Right.
that it's going to be, things are going to happen. And then what you do is preparation. And part of it is risk management. So if you're going into an area that has, let's say, a malaria problem, you make sure that you've prepared, for that issue. You're going into a place where English is not spoken very, very much. Okay, you better learn some of the language because you're going to need to communicate. You'd be physically prepared, and it's just this kind of, you go in with the attitude of adaptability, if you wish. But this is just things are going to go wrong. You're going to know that things are going to happen that you didn't anticipate. You take care of risk management as best you can, prepare as best you can. And then and you've probably developed this too through your travels, you develop a confidence that, no matter what comes, you work the problem and get through it. And that gives you patience and the mindset of not getting put off by what happens. So you don't get, overly anxious about it. You don't freak out about what happens. You go, okay, this happens. This is why we're here. This is why we're on the adventure. Why I'm here. My job is to work the problem. Let's get through it. Okay, what resources do we have? Can we hire a car? Can we find a translator? What can we do? And so you just come in with that mindset of already knowing it is unpredictable. You prepare as best you can, and you develop the confidence of being able to work the problem.
Yeah, that falls right in line with my experience. One time we were in Entebbe in Uganda, and we rented this Airbnb. Looks great price, and we spent like 4 days with no electricity. Somehow, everyone around us had electricity. So, but as soon as we got in, electricity was there, and then it turned off, and then we would try to message the person, like, okay, what's going on here? Did we, like, can you get on top of this? And they'll always be like, oh yes, I'll be there in an hour. I'll be there in the afternoon. And we did that for 4 days without electricity. And if we were not able to adapt to that circumstance, there's some other stuff that was thrown in there. Just somehow it became like there was like a bug season that we were not expecting. So every morning there would be like, just the floor would be littered with dead mosquitoes and dead flies that were coming in through all kinds of it's just, things didn't go well. Let's just put it that way. And I caught a stomach bug, and so I was just puking my guts out. It was just a lot of things that we had not planned for. But yeah, being able to adapt to that environment and just say, okay, this is what is happening. This is what is, not what I wish it was. Not, this is what I have, and how can I make the situation better, or how can I thrive in this, given what I have. So in your experience, how does this mindset, this way of thinking, this ability to adapt to rising circumstances, how does that translate into the ordinary life, everyday life, maybe even on your end of things, running a business? How does this kind of mindset translate to that?
We are more resilient. Your experiences, my experiences make us a lot more resilient, because when you have I guess the popular term now is first world problem. If you have a first world problem, but you've been to places where there are a lot bigger problems, you go, yeah, this is no big deal. Other people are freaking out. Goes, oh yeah, at least you got electricity. Nobody's shooting at you. So, just relax Nobody died, and you didn't cure cancer, and nobody died. So on those two extremes,
Right.
relax. Let's get it. Let's get the job done. I guess it's perspective. If you just had
Mm,
this little bit of experience, uh, and something's outside of that, yeah, you're going to freak out. But as you travel and as you challenge yourself, I think I love the word that you use where you seek to thrive. I think that's a great way to express it. No matter what's happening, in those situations, you wanted to thrive and excel and experience it and be good at whatever you're doing. But that gives
mm,
you a depth in your experiences. It gives you a depth in your resilience. It's like if we were training for a marathon, and if you're only running 3 miles a day, yeah, when you're running trying to do the 7 or 8 miles, it's going to hurt. But if you keep
mm,
progressively adding that mileage to your running, the marathon becomes much much easier. And a 5 mile
mm.
run is just a warm up now, while before it was a killer. Well, that
Yeah.
same experience, that same training of your mind to adapt, to thrive, happens, you know, when you travel, when you experience, when you put yourself outside of your comfort zone and challenge yourself, you come back, I believe, stronger. If you come back, if you have the
Mm,
right mindset that this is a challenge, I want to thrive. Okay, there's all kinds of mosquitoes. There's weird looking bugs crawling on my tent. Uh,
yeah.
we're getting
Yeah.
snowed in. We're out of food, or what have you. Or the jungle is 100 degrees Fahrenheit and 100 degrees or 100% humidity, and you're trying to keep up with the local tribesmen who are your guides.
Mm.
you know,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
just happened to me. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's that depth of experiences that make coming back here, the perspective is different. Now,
Mm,
do I get, anxious or nervous or frustrated? Of course, but
mm.
it
Right.
doesn't
Right.
put you off. You go, you know,
Mm,
rats, something happened, but you
yeah.
recover faster. Let's get it done.
Mm, okay.
Does that
Okay.
make sense?
Okay. I like that. Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. Uh, Earlier I asked you like, what are some of the misconceptions that people that we have in the U.S. About traveling abroad? So, and then now the question is, what are some of the misconceptions that you've ran into that people outside of the US have about Americans as you're traveling around? Like for me, one of the misconceptions that I keep running into is that we're rich, right? Like we're all
Exactly.
have
That's
have all kinds of money,
that's
and
the
I'm like,
number one
hey,
I've run
I'm
into.
okay, okay, and I'm typically broke, so I was like, yeah, I'm seeing that being one of the biggest misconceptions. But I'm wondering if you, yeah,
Yeah, pretty much.
what are the other
They
ones
all
that you've got?
see Hollywood. They all see America through media, but
Mm, mm,
that's made up stuff. But that's the perception that they have. We're all rich. We're all driving really fancy cars, living on the beach, doing
mm,
whatever. That
yeah.
comes down to, again, having a conversation with people. And by and large, the fact of the matter is, just about every American by global standards is rich. You go to places, um,
Yeah.
when I was in Africa and Kenya, I uh, volunteered setting up temporary medical clinics at this little village called Baruti. And,
Mm,
these folks, uh, they herd cattle and they grow as much crops as they can on the little plots of land, but they're living in, dirt floor, no electricity, uh, no running water. And,
yeah.
you know, but the thing of it was, yeah, I did a short interview on it a long time ago. I said, you walk through there, and at first you might go, man, the poverty, and you're so concerned about it. And it is real poverty, but the
Hmm.
people there make it work. They weren't,
Mm,
everybody
mm,
wasn't down and out. People were smiling. People were living. People were having a good time. They were making do with what they had. They were making it work. So
Yeah.
it, you got to, those are the misconceptions on both sides, that all Americans are rich, that, and we are by global standards. But just because you're quote unquote poor, meaning you don't have the dollars in your pocket or the shillings or what have you,
Yeah.
doesn't mean that you're having a bad life. So that's probably another misconception that I would think Americans would have is, okay, they don't have running water, so life must suck. No, it doesn't. In fact, some
Right.
happiest people I've met didn't have running water. Now, would they like to have running water? Of course, but yeah, that's something that you get to see and experience, because people are very resilient, and whatever their situation, if they have the right attitude, life is good.
Yeah. Yeah. I think as a species, we are bringing it back to the theme here. We're pretty adaptable. I mean, you'll find us in every corner of the world, almost literally. And so, yeah, we have an immense capability to thrive under all kinds of different circumstances and scenarios. Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head. Yeah. Well, when you said perspective is changes a lot, because I think, huh? I don't
I'll
know if
tell you
it's
one
this
thing
year. I don't
about
remember what.
perspective, and you probably
Yeah.
had this too when you came back from the States. The first thing you notice when you come back from traveling abroad, especially to some of the more exotic countries and off the beaten path, is coming home, being able to turn on the water faucet and be able to drink the
Mm.
water out of the faucet.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's a game changer. It's just, even like for me, the biggest one is flushing the toilet, right? Because it's like I remember when I was a youngling, it's like a house is overstatement, maybe that's the thing. But anyways, you have your house, and then you have a hole in the back, right, for the bathroom, and there's flies in there and everything, and they fly out, and when you're eating, your lunch or whatever, those flies, they come out. I mean, so just having a toilet that you can flush, that alone is just like, uh, whenever I think about this, like, man, we really have it good. And so that, knowing that, like, throws another problem into the equation, which is relatability. So sometimes when I'm yapping with someone and they're complaining about something that I find to be very minute, like, why are you so thrown off about this? Because I'm always trying to think about how much worse things could be. It makes me a lot less relatable. Like, it makes it harder for me to have some conversations with certain people, because I'm often unable to see it from their perspective. Like, okay, this is probably the worst that they've ever experienced, right? And it is as real as it gets for them, right? Because I'm always thinking about, dude, things could always be like even like tenfold worse than what you're experiencing. So that ends up being one of the downside of having these experiences. But yeah, anything you can add to that?
Yeah, you can be less patient and less empathetic to folks that are complaining about things that just really aren't that big a deal, but in their world, apparently it is. But because
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
perspective that you have of seeing many different cultures, many different environments, people's struggles, how exactly how you just described it, you kind of go, oh, this should not throw you off. Yeah.
right,
Okay,
right,
so
yeah,
your latte wasn't as hot enough. It didn't have the right amount of coconut flavored
yeah, right,
cream in it. You're going to be all upset.
mm,
Yeah, just be thankful that you
right,
can drink it.
right,
That you
right,
have it
yeah,
available to you. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
The
Quick question then. Uh, earlier you started by telling us a story of your upbringing. So let's go back to your childhood here for a second. What is your absolute earliest memory that you can think of?
probably
Like the
out there
first
wandering.
image, the first memory.
Yeah, wandering out there in
Hmm?
the fields. Yeah, I can
Okay.
remember that.
Okay. Wow, dude, climbing a tree, throwing a rock, just getting in
All of
trouble,
it.
stomping on
Just
all the above.
just walking up and down mountains and just seeing what was there.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
so
maybe I'm strange that way,
always a
but
wanderer.
that was very cool for me to just be out there and
Hmm.
I climb a mountain and well, it'd be a little hill, but to a little kid, it's a mountain,
Right, right.
and I'm on Everest in
Hmm.
my head. So
Right,
yeah,
right. Yeah.
maybe I had a
Huh,
really
that's
good
awesome.
imagination.
Yeah. That was another thing that was kind of hard for me to adapt coming to the States because in Mozambique, we had 4 hours of class time, right? So you either had 4 hours in the morning or 4 hours in the afternoon. And then the rest of the day was just climb trees, throw rocks, get in trouble. And then I came here and you have classes from like 7:40 a.m. until like 2:30 p.m. And I was just like, how is this possible? This is a lot of time. Can you touch on the importance of those early days, climbing hills, being out there, exploring, and how that has impacted into the young man that you are?
Well, I think probably your personality gets set pretty early. And so that
Hmm.
was just a reflection of who I was. And, fortunately, I listened to it and kept at it and just
Hmm.
followed that. That's who I am. And that's what I really like to do. I'm not really someone who goes out and seeks a lot of money. That doesn't have much meaning to me. For me, it's experiences and
Okay.
experiences of different people and different cultures. That it's not going to make my bank account any fatter, but hopefully at the old folks' home I'll have better stories.
Hmm. Would you say that encapsulates your definition of success?
Yes, exactly. For
Hmm.
for my personal success
Yeah.
is if I can travel and and be able to relate to people and experiences, but not be selfish enough and be able to come back and relate those stories to other people, because a lot of people don't have the ability to go out and travel and have those experiences, but they want to know about them. And so that's part of what I do is I go to these places and I interview people and take photographs and videos, but the whole object is to bring what I saw back to share with folks who can't. And
Hmm.
that's kind
Hmm.
of uh, that's found a mark. A lot of people also have that same interest. They just can't do it for a number of reasons. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's my definition, I guess, of a wealthy soul, as opposed to I know folks that they look at me going, yeah, but you're not making any money really at it. So well, okay, well I'm not,
Hmm.
but that's me and you.
Right. It's not part of your definition of success. And that's totally fine. That's totally fine. So, huh. Mr. Reinhardt, it's been a pleasure having you on the Moses Cabandana podcast. I'm gonna try to honor the hour here that we had set. Any final thoughts, and as we come to a close?
Can I share one more story?
Yes, please.
The because this goes to adaptability and upbringing. When I was 12 years old, I used to see on TV all of these Jacques Cousteau and divers and all this, and I wanted to be a scuba diver. It was really
Mm,
adventurous. So begged my mom to get me into scuba lessons, and she did. Funny enough,
okay.
So I go and I take these lessons, and the guy who's teaching it is this old, uh, hardcore Navy diver, and he
Mm,
put us through the ringer. We had to be in really good swimming shape, and he would do things like when we were in the pool practicing some scuba maneuver or whatever, he'd come up behind
mm,
you and turn your air off, or he would come and just rip your
mm,
mask off. And what he
yeah.
was doing, I didn't quite understand it at the time. He was teaching us not to panic, that whatever happens unexpectedly, deal with it. And you have
Yeah.
to when you're diving, because if you don't, well, your parents aren't setting another place at the table for you anymore. So
Right. Right.
we go to the checkout dive, and it's off the coast of California. The water's really cold. And we go down, and we're going through the kelp beds. It's like an underwater forest. His challenge to us to see if we'd make it is when we were down on the bottom in that cold water, we had to take our mask off. And then without a mask, we had to follow him through the kelp beds.
Mm.
And so that was his challenge, because when the water, that cold water hits your face, you know,
Yeah.
you lose your breath and you want to
Mm.
panic and so forth. But it taught you, okay, not to panic, you can work it. And then you figure
Mm.
out that, hey, I don't need a mask. I actually can see underwater to self-rescue if I needed to. And
Mm.
afterwards, it was a funny thing, because I was this skinny little kid, and we come up on the shore. He looks over at me, waves me over. He had collected a few rock scallops, and so he was over by his
Mm.
sink. We were on the beach, and he opens them up, starts cleaning them, and then he hands me one of the rock scallops. And he looks at me and goes, when you first started, I really didn't think you were going to make it. And then he handed me this rock
Mm.
scallop to eat. So it was kind of a really cool rite of passage. But there were so many
Yeah.
lessons
Yeah.
in there that if you reflect on
Mm.
it, about what he was teaching us is to expect the unexpected, and risk management, and you can get through it. Um, Plus, for that little kid that I was, it was the coolest thing to have this big old Navy diver kind of give that little
Mm.
acknowledgement of, here, kid, you made it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Huh.
those are the experiences
Wow.
that if you get out there out of your comfort zone, it'll stick with you and it can grow.
Yeah. Sounds like that experience, at the very least, showed you that there is more to you if you allow yourself to stretch yourself.
Yeah.
Ah, thank you so much for coming to the Moses
It,
Kabandana podcast, Mr. Reinhardt. It's been a pleasure.
it's been a pleasure, and hopefully we'll talk again soon.
Hopefully, we talk again soon. Thank you so much.